The heat of the New Orleans morning in October of 1848 was not the thick, breath-steaming blanket of summer, but a sharper, more metallic warmth that clung to the brick and stucco of the St. Louis Hotel. Inside the rotunda, beneath the great dome where speculators once bet on cotton futures, the air was a soup of cigar smoke, bay rum, and the eager sweat of men. All eyes were fixed on the mahogany block. The auctioneer, a man named Thibodeaux with a voice like gravel and molasses, was nearing his crescendo. He had just sold a blacksmith a prime hand with shoulders like anvils for $1,250. A murmur of appreciation rippled through the crowd. Now 2 boys, brothers of 12 and 14, were being paraded. Their terror was a silent, shivering thing that made their knees knock. But in the shadowed alcove to the side of the block, a different kind of attention was being curated. A cluster of men planters from upriver, brokers from the Carolinas, a couple of sleek, well-dressed gentlemen from the French Quarter with ambiguous professions, stood in a respectful half-circle around a smaller, seated figure. This was Monsieur Henry de la Cour, a factor and broker of fancy stock. He dealt in the particular, the exquisite, the singular. He did not deal in the open rotunda. Before him stood a girl. She was 16, perhaps, though her exact age was a mystery even to the man who owned her. She was tall and slender, her skin the color of creamed coffee, her features a breathtaking alchemy that silenced conversation. High cheekbones, a full mouth, eyes of a startling liquid gray that held the stormy light of the Gulf. Her hair, parted neatly in the center and pulled back into a simple chignon, was not the tight curl of the cane fields, but a cascade of deep chestnut waves. She wore a dress of simple but fine blue wool, utterly out of place in the slave quarters, yet modest enough to avoid vulgarity. It was the dress of a poor white girl on her way to church, and on her, it was a masterpiece of suggestion. Monsieur de la Cour did not touch her. He merely gestured with a pale, beringed hand. As you see, gentlemen, purity of line, health, a docile temperament, trained in basic domestic arts. She reads, she writes a fair hand. She can play a little upon the pianoforte. One of the French Quarter gentlemen, a man with oiled hair and a silk waistcoat, leaned in. The provenance. De la Cour permitted himself a small, tight smile. Her mother was an octoroon, acquired from a failing estate in Natchez, a beauty in her own right. The father. He let the word hang, and every man in the circle understood its unspoken finale. A gentleman of standing. It was the oldest, saddest story in the South, repackaged here as a certificate of quality. She has been kept privately, prepared for a refined household. This is not a field hand, this is an acquisition. The girl's name was Ariadne. She did not look at the men. She looked at a crack in the marble floor between her scuffed shoes, seeing not stone, but the red clay of a Mississippi riverbank 7 years past. She held her body perfectly still, a statue of exquisite compliance, but inside, behind the storm, gray eyes, a single coiled thought pulsed with the regularity of a heartbeat. Remember the river. Remember the sycamore, remember the song. This was her impossible secret. It was not her beauty which was a curse laid upon her. It was not her literacy which was a dangerous tool. It was a memory, a place, a whispered promise so fragile that to think of it here, in this perfumed menagerie, felt like a betrayal. Yet it was the only thing that kept her from dissolving into the horror of the moment. The bidding began, hushed and intense. Figures floated in the dense air, 1,500, 1,700, 2,000. Ariadne heard them as if from a great distance. Each number was a lock on a future door, 2,200, 2,005. She remembered her first master, a man who had not been unkind in his distant way, calling her to his library not to read to her, but to show her off to guests like a rare porcelain vase. See the intelligence in her gaze, he would say, and they would stare, their eyes leaving oily trails on her skin. That had been the quiet cruelty, to be made a living testament to her own mother's violation, and to be valued for the evidence of it. The final bid came from the silk waistcoated man, $3,000. It was a fortune, a sum that could buy a small farm and everything to work it. Monsieur de la Cour nodded, satisfied. The men dispersed, the lucky winner stepping forward to inspect his property more closely. He placed a finger under Ariadne's chin, tilting her face up to the light from the dome. His touch was cool, impersonal. She met his gaze for a fleeting second, and he saw nothing in the gray eyes but a placid, depthless fog. He was pleased. Docility was paramount. What he did not see, what no one in that room could possibly see, was the river. The great, muddy, singing river of her childhood, and the secret it held. It was the key to her, and she was the lock. And as the new owner's hand fell from her chin, the lock within her turned silently, one more notch toward an unknown fate. Ariadne was born in the last of the summer storms of 1832, in a cabin that smelled of wet earth and boiled linseed oil. The place was Cypress Hall, a tobacco and later cotton plantation in the Mississippi Delta, not far from Vicksburg. Her mother's name was Celeste. She was 16 herself when Ariadne came, a slight, lovely girl with the same near-straight hair and features that spoke of a white grandfather or great-grandfather lost in the ledger books of human property. The master of Cypress Hall was Joseph Pierce, a man of decaying fortune and immense pride. He was not a raving brute, he was a disappointed one. His land was good, but his fortunes were not. He maintained a brittle, formal courtesy, especially with his house servants, who were to him reflections of his own gentility. Celeste, for reasons never spoken, had been moved from the stifling heat of the weeding gangs to the cooler, but more psychologically complex, world of the main house. She helped in the kitchen, she mended linens, she was sometimes called to serve at table when guests were present, and Pierce wanted to display his refined stock. The birth of a gray-eyed, fair-skinned daughter was an event met with profound silence. Mistress Pierce, a gaunt woman haunted by migraines and the early deaths of 3 infant children, took one look at the baby and retreated to her darkened bedroom for a week. Master Pierce said nothing to Celeste, but a month after the birth, he summoned her to his study. Ariadne, wrapped in a scrap of homespun, was in her arms. He did not look at Celeste, he looked at the baby. "She will be called Ariadne," he said, his voice dry as old paper. "A classical name. She will remain with you until she is weaned, then she will be brought to the house. She will not work the fields, do you understand?" Celeste understood. Her daughter was being marked for a different path. It was a sentence, not a reprieve. She nodded, her throat too tight for words. For 9 years, Ariadne lived in a strange twilight. She slept in a pallet at the foot of her mother's cot in the cramped cabin she shared with 3 other women. By day, she was a ghost in the great house. She was taught to dust without disturbing the papers on Master Pierce's desk, to polish silver until she could see her own unsettling reflection in the bowl of a spoon, to move through the room with the silent, unobtrusive grace of a cat. Mistress Pierce, in her rare moments of clarity, taught her letters and numbers, less out of kindness than a perverse sense of duty to civilize what must be endured. Ariadne learned the quiet cruelty of the system. It was in the way Master Pierce would discuss crop failures and debt in the drawing room, his eyes sliding over her as if she were a piece of furniture, while she stood waiting to refill his brandy glass. It was in the overseer, Mr. Higgs, a man with a lipless mouth and eyes like chips of flint, who never shouted but whose whispered threats to the field hands carried more terror than any lash. The lash was used, of course. Ariadne heard its awful crack and the choked cries that followed from the far side of the quarters. But the true engine of control was the silent, omnipresent threat of it, the knowledge that any misstep, any hint of rebellion, could see you or someone you loved broken on the wheel of that violence. Her unique trait, recognized early by both her mother and the Pierces, was a preternatural stillness. It was more than silence. It was a profound internal retreat. When Master Pierce tested her reading, his finger tapping impatiently on the page of Gulliver's Travels, she would read in a clear, monotone voice, her mind floating somewhere above the room, observing the scene as if from the ceiling. when Mr. Higgs once cornered her in the pantry, his sour breath on her neck as he inspected the shelves. She had gone so still and vacant that he, unnerved, had simply shoved her aside and left. She was like a deep, clear pool that showed only a reflection of what was placed before it, hiding its cold, dark depths. Her solace was her mother. In the stolen moments of dusk, Celeste would take Ariadne's hand and they would walk, if they could, to the very edge of the cleared land, where the great Mississippi churned and muttered. "The river knows everything," Celeste would whisper, her voice fierce with a love she dared not show in the daylight. "It sees the past and it carries the future. It sings a song for those who know how to listen." And she would sing, not spirituals of anguish and hope, but an old lilting song in a French patois that her own mother had taught her. A love song or a lullaby, its meaning blurred by time, but its melody a river of sadness and sweetness. "Oh, bord de l'eau, tiat and dry, by the water's edge, I will wait for you. Remember this place, Ariadne," Celeste said one evening, pointing to a giant, lightning-scarred sycamore that leaned precariously over the rushing brown water. Its roots were exposed, clawing at the eroding bank like giant fingers. This tree, this bend in the river, the song, "No matter what happens, you hold this inside you. It is yours, it is real." Ariadne, aged 9, nodded, pressing the image, the sound, the smell of wet earth and riverweed into her heart. It became her secret chamber, the place she went inside her stillness. The separation came with the dry, coughing heat of 1841. Master Pierce's debts had finally overtopped his pride. There was to be a sale of extraneous assets. Mr. Higgs made the announcement at the quarters one evening, his voice flat. He read names from a list: a plowman named Isaac, 2 young boys from the stable, and Celeste. Ariadne, serving supper in the dining room that night, heard Master Pierce say to a business associate, "The woman is still comely. She'll fetch a good price in New Orleans. The girl is too young yet, but she shows promise. In a few years, she will solve my financial problems quite neatly." The world did not go dark. It went white, a silent, screaming whiteness. Ariadne's stillness became absolute. She did not cry when they put Celeste in the wagon with the others 2 days later. She stood on the steps of the great house, a small figure in a clean apron, her gray eyes wide and dry. Celeste looked back, her face a mask of anguish. Just before the wagon lurched forward, she raised her hand to her lips, then gestured to the river, hidden beyond the trees. Remember, Ariadne did not move. She held the secret, the river, the sycamore, the song. It was all she had left of her mother. It was the clay from which her soul was now formed, resilience, hard and cold as porcelain. Life at Cypress Hall after her mother's sale was an exercise in existing as a phantom. Mistress Pierce, perhaps feeling a sting of guilt or more likely seeing a new project, took a more direct hand in Ariadne's education. She was given discarded dresses of the mistress's long, dead younger sister. She was taught to pour tea with a steady hand, to stitch a finer seam, to play simple, mournful tunes on the parlor's out-of-tune pianoforte. Master Pierce would occasionally have her read from the newspaper or a book of sermons to his guests, a living parlor trick. Remarkable, is it not? He would muse, with the proper training they can achieve a semblance of refinement. The cruelty was in the premise. She was being refined not for her own sake, but as one would polish a stone or train a parrot. Her value was accruing, and she knew it. She saw the calculation in Master Pierce's eyes when he looked at her, which was now more often. She was no longer a child. She was becoming the promise he had spoken of. Her secret inner life flourished in the shadow of this gilded cage. She read everything she could sneak from the library, not just the approved sermons, but volumes of geography, history, even a battered copy of Robinson Crusoe. The world was vast. Rivers led to oceans, oceans led to other lands. The sycamore tree on the Mississippi bend was her first coordinate in a map of the mind she was drawing for herself. The escalation of suffering was subtle, a tightening of the vise. When she was 14, Mr. Higgs's leering attention grew more persistent. He would find reasons to be in the kitchen when she was there, his hand brushing hers as he took a biscuit. One afternoon, he cornered her in the stable loft, his intent clear in his flushed face. Ariadne did not scream. She looked past him through the dusty window toward the distant line of trees that hid the river. Her stillness was so complete, her gray eyes so empty of the fear he wanted to see, that his confidence faltered. Master Pierce's voice, calling from the yard for a horse, broke the moment. Higgs slunk away, but the threat vibrated in the air thereafter, a constant low hum. Then the betrayal. It came from a source she had not considered. A house slave named Martha, a woman who had been kind to her as a child. Jealousy, perhaps, or simply the desperate need to curry favor, twisted that kindness. Ariadne had been secretly teaching a young stable boy, Sam, his letters in the hayloft at night, using a stolen primer and a nub of chalk. It was an act of reckless compassion, a thread connecting her to the humanity of the quarters. Martha discovered them. She did not report it to Master Pierce. She reported it to Mr. Higgs. The punishment was masterful in its psychological violence. Sam was sold the next week, down river to a sugar plantation, a death sentence whispered in every cabin. Ariadne was not whipped. She was summoned to Master Pierce's study. "You have been stealing," he said, not looking up from his ledger. "You have been subverting property. You have forgotten your place." His voice was calm, disappointed. "Your value lies in your uniqueness, Ariadne, in your separation. You are not one of them. To pretend otherwise is to diminish yourself and to diminish my investment." He closed the ledger. "Your mother is dead." The words were a physical blow. The whiteness returned. Word came from New Orleans. Fever. He finally looked at her, his gaze clinical. "You have no ties now but to this house. You will cease these fraternizations. You will prepare. Next month we travel to New Orleans. Monsieur de la Cour has expressed an interest. You will be the making of this family yet." He dismissed her. She walked back to the tiny, closet-like room off the kitchen that was now hers, her steps steady. Inside, she locked the door, sat on the narrow cot, and stared at the wall. Her mother was gone. The song, the memory of the riverbank, they were now relics. The secret chamber in her heart, once a place of solace, turned into something harder, a vault. And inside that vault, a plan began to form, fragile and desperate as a spider's first thread. She would not be their making. She would be their ruin or her own escape. New Orleans was a cacophony of smells and sounds that made Cypress Hall seem like a forgotten dream. The de la Cour establishment was not a prison, but a gilded showroom. Ariadne and two other fancy girls were kept in clean, sparsely furnished rooms on the third floor of a townhouse in the Faubourg Marigny. They were taught to walk with books on their heads, to converse in polite banalities, to dance a stiff quadrille. They were fed well, clothed in demure but flattering dresses, and examined daily by a stern Creole matron for any blemish or sign of spirit. Ariadne's stillness served her perfectly here. She was the model pupil. She absorbed the lessons not as preparation for a life, but as instruction in a role she would need to play. Her beauty, now in full, troubling bloom, was her primary asset and her greatest danger. She saw the looks in the eyes of de la Cour's clients, not just desire, but a possessive, covetous hunger to own such a rare thing. The night before the auction at the St. Louis Hotel, lying on her narrow bed, she made her choice. It was not an elaborate plan for flight. The city was a maze, and she had no papers, no ally, no destination. It was a simpler, more terrifying decision. She would not survive the life that awaited her. The silk-waistcoated man who had bought her, a notorious gambler and brothel keeper named René Boudreau, was known even in whispers among the girls. To go with him was to descend into a particular hell. Her secret, the memory of the river, the sycamore, the song, had sustained her. Now it would guide her final act. If she could not have freedom, she would have the river. The Mississippi flowed past the city's levee. It had carried her mother away. It would carry her too. The day of the auction passed in a blur of preparation and the surreal horror of the rotunda. As Boudreau led her out a side entrance, his hand firm on her arm, She was preternaturally calm. He had a closed carriage waiting. "You are a rare prize, ma chère," he said, his voice slick with satisfaction. "You will be the jewel of my house on Rue Royale." She said nothing. She watched the streets pass, memorizing the route toward the river. The smell of salt and fish and sewage grew stronger. As the carriage turned onto a quieter street near the waterfront, she suddenly bent double, a cry of pain escaping her lips. Boudreaux started. "What is it?" "A pain, sir," she gasped, her voice strained with a convincing agony. "In my side, terrible," he cursed, eyeing his expensive, fragile new property with alarm. "Driver, stop here." The carriage halted near a wharf littered with barrels and coils of rope. The afternoon was fading into a mauve twilight. "Let me walk a moment," Ariadne pleaded, her face pale. The air, just a moment, suspicion fought with irritation in Boudreaux's face. He was a man of the city, not used to dealing with physical distress. He opened the carriage door quickly. "Do not try anything foolish." She stepped down, clutching her side. She took a few shaky steps toward the edge of the wharf, where the brown water swirled and chuckled against the pilings. The vast expanse of the river stretched to the far bank, the water the color of tarnished silver in the dying light. Upstream, forever upstream, was a lightning-scarred sycamore. This was it. The vault opened. The song her mother taught her filled her mind, not as a whisper, but a roar. "Oh, bord de Elo, G-Tiatendrai." She turned to look at Boudreaux, who was watching her, a frown deepening on his face. In her gray eyes, for the first time, he saw something, not docility, not pain, but a fierce, final clarity. It stopped him cold. She took one step back, then another. Her heel met empty air. "No." Boudreaux lunged. Ariadne let herself fall backward, not as a surrender, but as an embrace. The sky, the hungry water, the memory of her mother's face, they rushed up to meet her. The impact with the river was a shocking cold, a mouthful of choking silt. Then the tremendous, silent pull of the current. She did not fight it. She let it take her, tumbling her in its dark, powerful heart. The world became a roar of water and shadow. Her dress, the fine blue wool, became heavy as stone, dragging her down. She struggled then, not for life, but for the completion of the act. Let it be quick, but the river had other plans. Something hard struck her shoulder, a log debris. Instinct older than despair made her claw at it. Her hands found purchase on a gnarled, submerged branch. She broke the surface, choking, gasping. The current had already carried her far from the wharf. She could see the tiny, ant-like figure of Boudreaux jumping and pointing, his voice lost in the river's noise. She clung to the log, her mind a blank slate of shock. The river was not a gentle mother. It was a furious, indifferent giant. It swept her along, past the glowing lanterns of the city, past the moored ships that loomed like black castles. The cold seeped into her bones. Her strength was ebbing. Just as her fingers began to slip, a new sound cut through the roar. A rhythmic splashing and a low, guttural voice. "Hold fast, grab here." A long, hooked pole thrust into the water near her. Dazed, she grabbed it with her free hand. With a mighty heave, she was dragged sideways through the water toward a flat, bottomed, weathered skiff. A strong black hand gripped her wrist, then her arm, and hauled her, a sodden, gasping wreck, over the gunwale. She collapsed in the bottom of the boat, retching river water. Her savior was an old man, his hair and beard a grizzled white, his face a map of deep wrinkles etched by sun and wind. He was dressed in the rough clothes of a fisherman or a scavenger. He worked quickly, poling the skiff out of the main current toward a maze of shadowed bayous that bled off the main river. For a long time neither spoke. He poled, she lay shuddering. When they were deep in a still cypress-choked channel, hung with ghostly Spanish moss, he finally stopped. He lit a small lantern, its light painting his face in gold and shadow. His eyes, when they fell on her, were not kind, but they were assessing, and devoid of the hungry calculation she knew so well. "You belong to Boudreaux," he stated. His voice was like the rustle of cypress needles. She could only nod, teeth chattering. "He will be looking, with dogs, with the city guard." He studied her, the fine, ruined dress, the extraordinary face. "Why the river?" The directness of the question, the lack of pretense, unlocked her voice. It came out a raw scrape. It was better. A flicker in his old eyes, he nodded slowly. I am Ezekiel. This is my place. He gestured to the darkness. I collect what the river gives, driftwood, lost cargo, sometimes lost souls. He tossed her a coarse, dry blanket. You cannot stay, but you cannot go back. The turning point, which had seemed like an ending, had become a brutal, unexpected beginning. Ezekiel was no abolitionist saint. He was a free man of color, living a precarious, solitary existence on the margins of the swamp, tolerated because he was useful and knew too much to be bothered. He asked for no story. In the days that followed, hidden in his shack on stilts above the black water, he simply provided a space for her to exist. He gave her clothes, a boy's shirt and trousers, too large but dry. He fed her catfish stew and cornbread. Her secret, which had been a passive thing of memory, now became an active, dangerous truth. She told Ezekiel about Cypress Hall. About the sycamore tree, she hummed her mother's song. He listened, whittling a piece of cypress. That bend, I know it, he said finally. Near the old Choctaw crossing. A day's poling upstream from here if you know the back channels. He looked at her. What is there for you? My mother told me to remember it. It's all I have left of her. The words felt inadequate. Ezekiel was silent for a long time. The river gives, he said again, enigmatically, and the river takes. Sometimes it hides. Over the next week, a plan formed, not of escape to the north, an impossible dream from their watery isolation, but of disappearance. Ezekiel had connections, a Choctaw trader who moved through the territories, a free black mariner who occasionally took on unregistered cargo on coastal schooners to Mexico. But it was dangerous, expensive. It required a new identity, a story, and trust. Ariadne's unique trait, her stillness, her intelligence transformed. It became watchfulness, learning. She learned from Ezekiel how to read the water, how to pole the skiff in silence, how to find edible roots and berries in the swamp. She let the sun and wind darken her skin. She hacked off her chestnut waves with a fishing knife until her hair was a short, ragged cap. The beauty that had been her curse began to recede, hidden under mud and struggle. One evening, Ezekiel returned from a foray to a remote trading post, his face grave. Boudreaux is offering a reward, a substantial one. He says you are insane, dangerous. They are searching the swamps. He paused. He has a description. The gray eyes are memorable. Hope, a fragile bud, began to wither. Then Ezekiel did something remarkable. He went to a hidden hollow in the cypress knee beside his shack and pulled out a small, oilskin-wrapped bundle. Inside was a tiny, dried vial of a dark powder and a few coins. Indigo, he said, tapping the vial. From the old days when I worked the vats, it stains deeper than sin and it lasts. That night, by the dim light of the lantern, Ariadne leaned over a still patch of water. Ezekiel stood behind her. This will burn, he warned, and it will not come out. I do not want it to come out, she said. He applied the paste of indigo powder and water to her eyelids, the delicate skin around her eyes. The burn was fierce, like a poison ivy rash multiplied tenfold. She wept, but the tears were blue. For 2 days her eyes were swollen nearly shut. When the swelling subsided, she looked again at her reflection in the water. The storm, gray eyes were gone. In their place was a deep, permanent, smoky blue, the color of a twilight bruise. It changed her face utterly. The ethereal, unsettling beauty was muted, hardened. She looked older, weathered, a creature of the swamp. Ezekiel grunted, a sound of approval. The river has taken her, he whispered, and given us someone else. The journey upstream was a week of tortuous, nerve-wracking progress. They traveled by night, poling through still, secret channels, hiding by day in thickets of sawgrass and willow. Ezekiel's knowledge was their only map. Ariadne, now called Ari, a silent, blue-eyed boy in rough clothes, did her share of the work, her muscles hardening, her spirit honing to a fine, sharp edge. They reached the bend near the Choctaw crossing on a morning shrouded in river fog. The great sycamore was there, more eroded, more desperate, looking than in her memory, but alive. Its roots still clawed at the void. Ezekiel waited in the skiff, hidden in the mist. Ariadne stepped onto the muddy bank, her heart hammering against her ribs. This was the coordinate of her soul, but why? What was here? She walked to the massive trunk, placing her hand on the rough, peeling bark. She remembered her mother's touch, her whispered words, "Remember this place." She walked around it. On the side facing away from the river, sheltered by a curtain of hanging vines, she saw it. A deep, dark hollow at the base, where two great roots diverged. Something was stuffed inside, wrapped in rotted canvas. Her breath caught. With trembling hands, she pulled it out. It was heavy. Unwrapping the crumbling fabric, she found a small, watertight metal box, rusted but intact. Using a sharp stone, she pried open the lid. Inside, wrapped in a piece of waxed cloth, was a stack of paper. Letters, and beneath them a leather pouch that chimed softly. She opened the pouch. Gold coins, American eagles, Spanish doubloons, a small, significant fortune. She sat in the mud, the fog curling around her, and by the faint light, read the top letter. The handwriting was elegant, hurried. "My dearest Celeste, I cannot undo what I have done, nor can I claim you in this world. But I will not let my child be a slave. This money is for her. Use it to buy your freedom, then hers. From Pierce, there is a man in Natchez, a Quaker named Alistair Cole at the sign of the Blue Boot. He will help you get north. I have arranged it. Go to him. Take our daughter. Forgive me if you can. E." The letter was dated September 1831. 8 months before her birth. The world tilted. Her mother had known. She had known freedom was possible. The secret wasn't just a memory. It was a legacy, a plan. Her father, a shadow named E, had provided a means. But why had Celeste not used it? The next letters, growing increasingly desperate, told the story. Celeste had tried. She had contacted the Quaker, Cole. But before the plan could be enacted, Master Pierce, in a fit of suspicion, or perhaps after discovering the correspondence, had sold Celeste to New Orleans with shocking speed. She had hidden the box here, in the place she had shared with her daughter, hoping against hope that Ariadne would one day understand, would find it. The last water-stained note was in her mother's hand, shaky and brief. "My Ariadne, if you read this, I am gone. The money is yours. The man in Natchez may still help. Your father's name was Edward Thorpe. He is dead now. Do not look for him. Look for freedom. Follow the river north. I love you, remember." A sob, long and ragged, tore from Ariadne's throat. It was a sound of grief, but also of furious, overwhelming revelation. She had not been forgotten. She had been loved fiercely and planned for. Her secret had been real. It was a key, not just to memory, but to a future stolen from her mother. She staggered back to the skiff, clutching the box. Ezekiel read the letters, his old face impassive. When he finished, he looked at the coins, then at her blue, stained eyes, now wide with a new, terrifying hope. "The river gives," he said softly, then he nodded toward the north. "Alistair Cole of Natchez is known to me, a good man, but Natchez is a claw of the slave power. We cannot go as we are." A new plan, born of this reversal, took shape. The coins bought not just possibility, but identity. Through Ezekiel's labyrinthine connections, a story was woven. A young, free woman of color, a seamstress from Mobile, orphaned, seeking passage to Ohio to live with a widowed aunt. Papers were forged, a dress more in keeping with a modest free woman was acquired. The indigo stain was permanent, a blessing in disguise. No one looked for a blue-eyed woman. The farewell to Ezekiel was wordless. He pressed a carved cypress token into her hand, a tiny, perfect sycamore leaf. She embraced the old man, feeling the strength in his frail, seeming frame. He had been the unexpected ally, the ferryman from one world to the next. "Remember the swamp too, child," he said. "It hides many hearts." Ariadne's journey north was a study in quiet tension. She traveled by steamboat, sitting in the colored section, her forged papers clutched in her sweaty hand, avoiding the gaze of any man who looked too long. In Cincinnati, she found the Quaker network. Alistair Cole, an old man now, wept when she told him her mother's name and showed him the letters. "We waited for years," he said, his voice thick. "We heard of her sale, we feared the worst. With his help, she settled in Oberlin, Ohio. She used a portion of the gold to buy a small, tidy cottage. She claimed her father's surname, Thorpe, and her mother's first name, Celeste, becoming Celeste Thorpe. She told people she was a widow from New Orleans, her husband lost at sea. The story was thin, but her reserved demeanor discouraged questions. She lived a life of deliberate quiet. She opened a small seamstress shop, her stitches as fine and strong as spider silk. She never married. She was helpful to the cause when she could be, hiding a fugitive in her root cellar once for 2 terrifying nights, donating money to the abolitionist press. But she did not speak at meetings. She did not tell her story. The memory of the auction block, of Boudreaux's hand on her arm, of the cold river swallowing her, lived in her bones. So too did the feel of the rusted box, the sight of her mother's handwriting. She had escaped the physical chains, but the psychological ones were forged of a different metal. She was haunted by the ghosts of what might have been, her mother alive, a childhood by the river in freedom, a father who was more than a signature. Her blue eyes, a source of curious comment for decades, eventually faded with age to a softer slate gray, though the stain never fully vanished. They saw the Civil War come and go, saw the tumultuous, often betrayed promise of Reconstruction. She saw former slaves, now free men and women, walk the streets of Oberlin with a pride that made her heart ache with a complicated joy. One afternoon in 1888, an old woman of 56, she sat on the porch of her cottage, a quilt in her lap. The spring sun was warm. A young historian, an earnest woman from Oberlin College, sat beside her. The woman was collecting narratives of the before time from the town's older black residents. "Mrs. Thorpe," the young woman asked gently, "you came from the South, did you not, before the war? Would you be willing to share anything of your life? It is so important that we remember." Celeste Thorpe looked out at the street where new leaves trembled on the maple trees. She saw the red clay of Mississippi, the roiling brown water, the terrifying dome of the St. Louis Hotel. She felt the ghost of her mother's hand in hers. She heard the song, faint as a distant echo. Au bord de l'eau, she turned her faded blue-gray eyes on the young historian. She saw the eagerness there, the desire for a tale of woe and triumph, for a clean narrative of evil overcome. She smiled, a small, sorrowful, and deeply private smile. She placed her wrinkled hand, still nimble from a lifetime of sewing, over the young woman's. "My dear," she said, her voice soft but clear, "some rivers run too deep for telling. Some memories are their own kind of country, and the passport is a sorrow I would not wish on you. Remember that we were here, that is enough." The historian, disappointed but respectful, nodded and eventually took her leave. Alone again, Celeste Thorpe closed her eyes. In the darkness behind her lids, the river flowed on, eternal and brown, carrying the sediment of forgotten lives, of secrets buried in sycamore roots, of love that could not save but could, against all odds, endure. She had not been a heroine of a grand escape. She had been a girl, then a woman who had carried an impossible secret across water and time, and in the carrying had found a way to bear the unbearable weight of memory. She was Ariadne. She was Celeste's daughter. She was the ghost of the St. Louis Hotel and the heart of the cypress swamp. She was a stitch in the vast, ragged quilt of history, seen only by those who knew to look for the pattern in the chaos of threads. And when she breathed her last years later in her quiet bed, the song was on her lips, a final, silent whisper to the river that had taken and given and finally carried her home.